You know what broke me that day? Standing at my father's funeral, still numb from grief, when my brother Richard leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Did Dad have life insurance?" Not a word about love, not a memory, not even a tear. Just money. That was the moment I knew. If my brother only cared about inheritance, then one day I'd teach him what real loss felt like. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with John. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever seen someone reveal their true colors at the worst possible moment? My name is Willow. I grew up in a household that worshipped boys and dismissed girls. My parents always treated me like I was secondary, while Richard, my older brother, was treated like a little prince. Richard was spoiled rotten. If he wanted something, my parents gave it to him. He never had to work a day during his college years. Tuition, books, meals, even rent, all paid for by Mom and Dad. I wasn't surprised when he started treating them like his personal ATM. He never called to check in, never visited out of love. The only time the phone rang was when he needed money. And my parents, they fed this monster. They excused everything he did, saying, "He's a boy, he needs to focus on his studies." Meanwhile, I worked part-time jobs, studied late into the night, and learned what it meant to fight for every small piece of independence. When Richard met Clara, things only got worse. She was already 5 months pregnant with another man's child when Richard swooped in, claiming he was saving her. But really, it was another excuse to beg my parents for more money. I need to help Clara. I need to provide for her baby. You can't expect me to focus on my career right now. And my parents, blinded by their devotion, poured even more into him, while I sat quietly, watching, invisible. But when our father passed away, everything changed. I'll never forget Richard's behavior. He barely visited Dad when he was sick, never once asked how he was holding up. And on the day of the funeral, when people were still wiping away tears, when I was still clutching the memory of a man who raised us, Richard's first thought wasn't about family. It was money. That one selfish question, did Dad have life insurance, was the seed. That was the moment I decided that someday, somehow, Richard would choke on the greed that ruled his life. I had seen my brother Richard's greed many times before, but after Dad's death, it grew like a wildfire. He didn't grieve. He didn't comfort Mom. He only wanted to know what money might still be on the table. That was when I decided, if he was going to treat our parents as nothing more than a bank, then I would let him trip over his own hunger. The seed of my trap had to be planted early, while Mom was still alive. One evening, as Mom sat in the living room with her friend George, who happened to work in insurance, I made sure Richard overheard a small but powerful detail. I spoke just loud enough while passing by the doorway. It's a good thing Mom applied for that policy. $500,000 is no small protection. Richard's head snapped up. His eyes widened. He said nothing in that moment, but I could see it, the greed already tightening its grip. He believed every word. From then on, Richard began circling like a vulture. He visited more often, but not out of love. Every question, every glance was about money. I caught him once staring at Mom's paperwork on the kitchen counter, his lips moving as if he were already counting dollar bills. Clara, his wife, whispered to him in the corner, her eyes shining with excitement at the thought of a fortune they didn't earn. And then came the hospital. When Mom collapsed from chest pains and was rushed to the ER, I sat at her bedside, terrified I might lose her. Richard sat too, but not with grief on his face. No, he had that calculating look, the one I knew too well. He wasn't watching the monitors. He wasn't listening to the doctors. He was thinking about that. $500,000. At one point, he leaned close to me, lowering his voice. "Does Mom have any cash in her purse? Kid needs food." I froze, my hands clenched into fists. Even here, in a hospital room where our mother fought for her life, Richard could only think about money. I pulled Mom's small purse onto my lap, stared at it for a long moment, then shoved it back into the drawer. "No," I whispered sharply. But inside, something snapped. That was it. That was the final proof I needed. Richard wasn't a son, wasn't a brother. He was a parasite, and parasites only understand one thing, being cut off from their host. In that cold hospital room, under the buzz of machines and the smell of antiseptic, I made a vow. I'll make him choke on the very greed that drives him. A week later, My mother's heart gave out. She never came home again. And as I clutched her belongings after signing the final paperwork, Richard's first words to me were not about sorrow, not about memories. They were the same as always. So, about that life insurance. And my trap was ready to spring. Losing Mom so soon after Dad felt like someone had ripped the floor from under me. Suddenly, I was alone in the house, surrounded by her clothes, her perfume lingering in the air, her empty chair at the table. And yet I had no time to truly grieve. The responsibilities piled onto me like stones. I had to arrange the funeral, deal with endless paperwork, settle her personal effects, and answer distant relatives who hadn't spoken to us in years, but now called with false sympathy. Through it all, Richard was nowhere to be found, except when he needed an update about money. Every time the phone rang, I already knew the question before answering. So, when do we get Mom's life insurance payout? Have you heard back from the company yet? Clara says we need to start planning with that money. The kids deserve a better future. And Clara wasn't shy either. She called me directly one afternoon, her voice sharp, almost accusing. You're not trying to keep it for yourself, are you, Willow? That money belongs to Richard, to our children. You can't just hoard it. I bit my tongue, forcing myself to sound calm, though my anger boiled. No one's received anything yet, Clara. Nothing is certain. But they didn't hear me. They didn't want to. Richard acted as if the check was already in the mail. He swaggered around like a man newly rich. He bragged to friends, spent money he didn't have, and even financed some flashy new purchases. I heard whispers from neighbors. He put down payments on things, telling everyone, "Don't worry, I'll be flush soon." $500,000 coming my way. And I watched, silent, patient, because every dollar he spent was a rope tightening around his own neck. 3 weeks after Mom's death, the letter arrived. The envelope bore the company's logo in sharp black letters. My hands trembled as I slid it open, my heart pounding. Inside, the words leapt off the page. "We regret to inform you that your mother did not qualify for coverage." That was it. All of Richard's dreams, all of his entitlement, all of Clara's smug threats, reduced to ash in one sentence. The policy had never existed beyond application. There was no payout, no $500,000, nothing. I almost laughed, though it caught in my throat like a sob. The trap had sprung. I didn't need to call him. The news traveled fast. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet, I heard a pounding at my door. Heavy, desperate fists against wood. When I opened it, Richard stood there, pale, shaking, eyes wide with panic. In his hand was the same letter I had read that morning, now crumpled and sweaty. "You knew," he hissed. "You knew all along." And for the first time in my life, I felt no fear of him, only satisfaction. Clara pushed forward, her fingers stabbing the air between us. "This is your fault, Willow. You lied, you stole from us. That money was for Richard, for our children. How could you do this to family?" I crossed my arms, my voice steady, colder than I thought possible. "I didn't steal anything. There was nothing to steal. You built castles on sand, Richard, and now the tide has come in." For a moment, silence. Then Richard's shoulders slumped, his fury collapsing into desperation. His voice cracked as he confessed, almost against his will. "I spent it already. $40,000 gone. Vacations, furniture, car payments. I thought the check would cover it. Now the banks are calling. Clara's screaming, and I've got nothing." Clara burst into tears, turning her anger fully on me. "You're taking food out of my children's mouths. You heartless witch." But inside my chest, I felt nothing but clarity. "No, Clara, I'm not stealing from your children. You and Richard chained them to your own greed." I was about to close the door when Richard's face twisted again, shifting back from despair to rage. He shoved past me, barging into the house. "You did this!" he roared, grabbing a lamp from the table and hurling it against the wall. Glass exploded across the floor. He kicked a chair, overturned a shelf, his rage filling every corner of the home I had tried to keep safe after Mom's death. "Richard, stop!" I shouted, my voice shaking for the first time. "Get out of my house!" But he didn't hear me. He was lost to the storm, his eyes wild, his fists clenched as he smashed another frame. A photograph of Mom and Dad. That was enough. My hand trembled as I dialed, but my voice was firm when the dispatcher answered. Yes, this is Willow. I need the police. My brother has broken into my house and is destroying everything. Minutes later, the flashing red and blue lights painted the walls. 2 officers forced Richard back out the door, his shouts echoing down the street. Clara followed, clutching at his arm, still screaming about injustice. I stood in the wreckage of my living room, my breath uneven but my heart steady. As the door closed and the night returned to silence, I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning, Richard. You thought money was your power, but now it's your ruin." The night Richard was dragged out of my house by the police was the night everything changed. Not just for me, but for him. The neighbors had watched from their windows as flashing red and blue lights bathed the street. By the next morning, whispers had spread. People who once saw Richard as the golden son now called him unstable, reckless, a man who couldn't control his own temper. Clara walked beside him with her head down, but her eyes, those betrayed her. She wasn't looking at me anymore as the enemy. She was looking at him. The first cracks were showing, and then came the fallout. The credit card companies called nonstop. The banks began sending letters stamped final notice. His new car, bought with money he didn't have, was repossessed in broad daylight. Neighbors gathered on their porches to watch as the tow truck hauled it away. Richard screamed at the driver, cursed at the sky, but it was useless. The vacation debt was next. He had taken Clara and the kids on trips, parading around as if $500,000 were already his. Now collectors wanted their cut. And the landlord, he came knocking too. Clara's voice carried through the thin walls when they argued late at night, words like eviction and homeless echoing through the quiet street. Through it all, Richard kept coming back to me. Sometimes he showed up defiant, his jaw clenched. "This is on you, Willow. You ruined me. You'll pay for this." Other times he tried a different tactic, his tone almost pitiful. "Look, sis, I just need a little help. Just enough to get me back on my feet. You have no idea how hard it is with kids. Please." But I didn't flinch. I didn't open my wallet. I didn't forget the hospital, the funeral, the way he looked at our parents as nothing more than dollar signs. Inside, I reminded myself, this isn't cruelty. This is justice. He is reaping what he sowed. Clara began to unravel, too. Once so smug, she now looked tired, her voice brittle when I saw her at the store. She snapped at Richard in public, her patience thinning with every overdue notice. It was clear. She had placed her bet on a man who couldn't even keep himself standing without leaning on everyone else. Weeks passed. The storm only grew darker for them. And then one evening, just as I was folding laundry in the quiet of my home, the knock came again. Softer this time, almost timid. I opened the door. Richard stood there, hollow-eyed, his shoulders slumped like a man already defeated. Clara was nowhere in sight. He looked smaller, older somehow, as if the weight of his own choices had finally settled on his back. "Please, Willow," he whispered. His voice cracked. "I'm losing everything. The house, the car, Clara, she's talking about leaving. I can't breathe. I can't fight anymore. Please, just give me something. Anything. For the kids." For a moment, I only stared. I remembered the lamp he smashed, the photo of our parents shattered on the floor, the hospital room where he asked about money instead of Mom's heartbeat. I stood in the doorway, the distance between us wider than oceans. And finally I spoke, quiet but firm. "Everything you've lost, Richard, you didn't lose because of me. You lost it because of you. Because of your greed. Because you chose money over family, over love, over everything that mattered." His lips trembled, his eyes glistened. But I didn't move. The door clicked shut between us. And in the silence that followed I knew Richard was finally meeting the true price of his own hunger. By the time winter came, Richard was a shell of the man he once pretended to be. The neighbors who once admired his swagger now crossed the street to avoid him. Creditors hounded him. His car was gone, his house on the verge of foreclosure. Clara had finally taken the kids and left, retreating to her parents' home, whispering words like mistake and regret. And me. I lived in the same house my parents left behind. I kept it tidy, quiet, filled with memories and peace. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing freely. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, there came another knock at my door. We both knew this was the last one. When I opened it, Richard stood there alone. His coat was thin, his face pale, and his eyes carried the emptiness of someone who had finally run out of excuses. He looked around, as if ashamed to even meet my gaze. "Willow," he rasped. "I've lost it all. Clara's gone. The kids won't see me. The bank, they're taking the house. I've got nowhere left to go." He paused, his shoulders shaking. "I thought maybe you could help me. Just a little. You're all I've got now." For a long moment, I said nothing. My heart wrestled with pity, but it was drowned by the weight of years, of watching him leech off Mom and Dad, of his coldness at their funerals, of his rage in my living room, and of the way he had used everyone and everything until nothing was left. "Help you," I finally said. "Richard, every chance you ever had, you wasted. You had love, family, a home, and you traded all of it for greed. And now, you want me to rescue you from yourself." Tears welled in his eyes. He dropped to his knees in the snow, his voice cracking like broken glass. "I don't know how to live without someone saving me. I never learned. For the first time, I truly saw it, the boy my parents had spoiled, the man who had never grown beyond it. He wasn't just cruel, he was hollow. And maybe that was the cruelest thing of all." I knelt slightly, meeting his eyes through the cold air. My voice was soft, but sharper than any knife. "Then this is your lesson. No one is coming to save you. Not Mom, not Dad, not Clara, and not me. You'll either stand on your own, or you'll fall. But it won't be my burden anymore." I stood, closing the door slowly as the sobs echoed against the wood. Inside, the house was warm, filled with the hum of quiet. I looked at the framed photos of Mom and Dad, the same ones Richard had once shattered in rage. I had restored them, set them neatly back on the shelf, and I whispered, not to Richard but to them, "Don't worry." He finally learned. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not because I had destroyed my brother, but because I had refused to let him destroy me.